Hello, it's Dawn Michelle from Boho Tarot, and welcome to my monthly journal pages. Today we'll be flipping through my October pages and chatting about the journal spreads, techniques, and ephemera I created to connect with my personal tarot practice last month. So the month begins with my little bookmark that I always have, and an October overlay. So I have the decoration for October, I have my little calendar with my moon phases, a little pumpkin for Halloween, and then a list of my moon phases down here. Then I have my card of the month, which comes from my Wheel Ahead spread. I have the main tarot deck, which was the Bohemian Gothic, the main Oracle, which was the Flowers of the Night, and the main Lenormand, which was the Anna Kay that I worked with, and a list of the deck combos that I used for each week. My new moon intention, which I didn't actually do in October because I had so much other stuff going on. And then, of course, my monthly reflection, which I fill in at the end of the month. So the one thing that I did this month that's been a little bit different is, besides partaking in the Lionheart Season of the Witch Tarot Challenge, I created a separate booklet for this because I am starting to run out of pages in my journal. This is all I have left, and some of this is already done. And I'm a little bit afraid that I'm not going to make it through to December, and I really am trying to make it through December in this book because in 2020 I'm changing up my journaling a little bit, which we'll talk about in another video next month. So I created a little separate insert so that I could pull this in and out to work with as I was working on the challenges. So I just printed off a little copy, did some little collaging, and then I basically just made a bound little booklet in here. And for this one, I just printed off the prompts, wrote my cards, and then my little interpretation. I didn't really include any pictures from the challenge because they are all on my Instagram. I did print this one off just to fill it in here because I thought that one was really great. So that is one of the things that I did that's a little bit different, and I am going to be doing for November Tarot Challenge because like I said, I'm running out of space, so I'm trying to condense things where I can. This was my Halloween spread, so I have my reading over here, and I have my cards, and then just my question was, what messages do my ancestors have for me as the veil thins, which I did on Halloween. And then I have all of my cards and my message from my reading. And then I just kind of sit this in here because it's kind of free floating. So next we move into my kind of month ahead thing. Now this was, instead of doing my traditional month ahead spread, I did a pull using my modified literary witches, and this was really awesome, and I've really enjoyed working with this deck. If you haven't seen my modification of that, I have basically created the deck into an oracle using the author cards, and then like a Lenormand using the witches materials, and I'll try to remember to link that in the description box below if you want to check it out. But this was a really great reading, and I've actually done several other readings with this deck. I just haven't included them in my journal. Not every reading I do ends up in my journal, so sometimes I just do them on the fly, and it's just messages I need to know right here, right now. It's not something that I really need to document for future reference. Another thing that I did, which this page was left blank for the majority of the month. I knew that I wanted to start with my normal 2 pages for my weekly cards, so I left this page blank, and then later on I went in and filled in with, these are color copies of cards that I've created, and I'll go ahead and show you these ones. I've been working on, it's totally separate from my journaling, but I've been working on a set of kind of personal ritual cards. So these are just, and I did them on, this is an oversized tangled playing card deck that I got from the dollar store. So I've just been collaging over the top of them, and my intention is just to kind of work on these and add cards as I feel called to do them. It's very much a personal thing, very much related to my personal practice, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But I created a cauldron card, I created a death card, a book card, and a flower card. So again, these are just cards that I'm working on to be able to pull into my personal practice, and it's just something that I'm going to work on here and there along the way. And I decided to just include a few color printouts of the cards in here just so that I have them here as well. So moving into the first week, I pulled my weekly oracle. For this month, I was using the Flowers of the Night oracle, which was a favorite, which was a really great deck. I do have an unboxing, I think, of this deck on my channel. And then I also, of course, all of the decks that I'll be talking about here in my spreads will be listed in my monthly reflections video in case you want to go back and find out how I felt about working with each of these decks, and I'll link that in the description box below as well. So for this one, I wrote down the affirmation that was in the book and just a little snippet from the book itself. So with these cards, my weekly cards, I really tend to pull from the guidebook for these particular messages, and this is my oracle card for the week that sits up on my board. Then I did my weekly Lenormand reading, which is what should I be focusing on. And as I've mentioned before, this is kind of me practicing learning Lenormand, so my layout changes a little bit from week to week, but the overall prompt is the same. And I did this with my Anna K. Lenormand, which I used the whole month. So the first week in October, I used my Isidore Tarot and my Botanical Inspirations, which is just two decks that I just really, really love. I did mod my Isidore Tarot. Again, I have a mod with me video on that. I also did at the end of the month, or at the end of the week, because I didn't start this on Monday, because Monday was technically in September. So I started on Tuesday the 1st. So I had a little bit of extra space. So I did one of my tarot spreads from my personal little white book, and that's the Free Your Mind spread. And I just did a little spread with those two decks. So moving into the second week, I had my oracle card, which was communication. Again, a little bit from the book, and the affirmation. My weekly Lenormand spread with the Anna K, with what should I be focusing on. And then we had my cards for the week. And this week I used the Santa Muerta Tarot and the Earthbound Oracle. And again, just wrote my reflections, my cards and my reflections for that week. For the next week, I started using just the affirmations because with the keyword and the affirmations, that was really, to me, those were two really powerful combinations with this deck. So that's really what I started focusing on and what I started recording. I did my weekly Lenormand with the what should I be focusing on, again, using the Anna K. And then this week, this is kind of my favorite section of the journal this month. Every month there's usually a page or two or a spread or two that really, that are kind of my favorite. And you can definitely tell where I've spent more time on them. But this is the week that I used the Carnival at the End of the World and the Oracle of Oddities. I posted about this deck on Instagram. I've kind of gushed about it in my weekly reflections, but these two decks together were just completely awesome. They totally blew my mind. So I did my daily cards, and then I also did a brief check-in spread with the two decks, which is really cool. The other thing that I did with these two decks, which we see here on this page, is I did a spread. It wasn't really a spread. What I did was I had a conversation with the Carnival at the End of the World and the Oracle of Oddities. And I asked it a question, and I pulled a card. I pulled two cards, one from each deck. So I asked the Carnival at the End of the World my question, and then I asked the Oracle of Oddities what additional information I had. Based on that little conversation here, I continued the conversation card after card. So it was like, what do you think here? Okay, well then what about here? Well then what about here? Okay, but what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? I'm not going to go into what I actually asked, because that's, again, I'll just show you real briefly. Like, I just real quick wrote it down, highlighted my notes or my prompts, and then because I didn't really want to rewrite it, I just made a pocket and tucked it in there. But that was a really interesting exercise of just having this real free-flowing, not using a spread, just pulling cards, asking questions, pulling cards, and letting the cards themselves dictate sort of the next on-the-fly prompt, if you will. So it's really like a conversation. So I ask a question, the cards give me an answer. So I continue the conversation, and the cards give me more answers. And it was really interesting to see that flow. That's definitely something I will do again. It kind of surprised me in some of the things that I had to say. So I did the same thing again, basically, at the end of the week, and just pretty much asked these two decks about how they felt about our week together. And, you know, I asked, how do you feel about our week together? Pulled those cards and I said, well, okay, so how should we proceed from here? Pulled these 2 cards, and then what final message do you have for me then? And then that was our week together spread. So not really a spread, just asking questions and pulling cards. And that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that. So the next week I pulled my oracle, which was awareness, and the affirmation that was in the book. And of course my weekly Lenormand with what I should be focusing on this week. And for this week, I used the Tarot of Curiosities and the Vintage Wisdom. I did not do a prompt on Tuesday because I had some things come up that I had to deal with. And so Tuesday is missing, but the rest of the week I did. Having missed a day, I did have some extra space. And because I got the Queen of Locks twice in 1 week, I made a printout here and put it in here so that I can really come back and look at this card and think about what message did that card have for me, because obviously it was important. It came up twice in 1 week. So that allows me to kind of go back and sit with this message, even though the deck is, you know, put away because I've moved on to a different one this week. So the final week of October, so I pulled my card, and which I thought was really great because the card was achievement and the affirmation was, I really can do this, which I thought was really great. Really particularly important for me in this week because the week prior there were some family issues that needed to be dealt with, and it was really, I really got some great messages, some supportive messages throughout the following week for my card. So that was really great. So I had my weekly Lenormand reading. And then the last week I worked with the Zombie Tarot and the Halloween Oracle. And I had a lot of fun working with these two decks. I almost always print my Monday cards, but this time I also printed my Friday cards because these 2 cards also showed up in my Samhain reading. So here was the 10 of Hazards and the Witch. So because they showed up in my Samhain reading as well as my daily cards for Friday, so they showed up for me on Thursday through my Samhain reading, not in my daily pull, but through that larger reading. And then I pulled them again on Friday. So I thought, you know, they've really got some messages for me. So I made a copy of those 2 and put them in here. So again, so I can come back and take a look at those. So that was it. That was all of the pages that I created for October. I think the week that I worked with the Carnival at the End of the World and the Oracle of Oddities, I think this was my favorite one. Obviously, you can tell, like I distressed the whole page. I blacked the edges. I mean, I spent a lot of time on this spread. I spent a lot of time on most of my spreads, but this particular week I spent a lot of time journaling with this deck. I've got 2 whole pages dedicated just to these 2 decks, so that was a really great one for me. Thank you for joining me for this flip through of my October journal pages. If you'd like to find out more about any of the decks that I used last month, check out my October Reflections video, which you will find linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this walkthrough of my journal and will join me again soon for more creative tarot for an inspired life.